The term Sharia often evokes strong reactions and misconceptions in the West. Many people associate it with harsh punishments and strict regulations. It's frequently portrayed as a rigid and archaic legal system, one that is incompatible with modern values and human rights. However, such depictions are far from the truth. Sharia is much more nuanced and multifaceted. Sharia, in its essence, translates to the path to the watering hole. This metaphor beautifully encapsulates its true meaning, a source of guidance and sustenance for Muslims in all aspects of life. This guidance is not limited to legal matters, but extends to personal, social, and spiritual dimensions. It aims to create a balanced and harmonious life. Sharia is not merely a set of punishments or restrictions. It is a comprehensive system that promotes justice, compassion, and community welfare. It encompasses a holistic framework for living, guiding Muslims towards a life of purpose and fulfillment. This includes ethical conduct, family relations, and community responsibilities. It covers a vast spectrum of human behavior, from rituals and beliefs to social interactions and financial transactions. Every aspect of life is considered, ensuring that actions align with moral and ethical principles. Understanding Sharia requires delving into its origins and the sources from which it is derived. These sources include the Quran, the Hadith, and the consensus of scholars. These sources provide the framework for interpreting and applying Islamic principles in a constantly changing world. They offer insights into how to navigate contemporary issues while staying true to core values. By exploring these sources, we can begin to appreciate the depth and complexity of Sharia. It is not a monolithic system, but one that allows for diverse interpretations and applications. It is a system that strives to balance individual needs with societal well-being. This balance is crucial for fostering a just and equitable society. This essay aims to provide a concise and accessible guide to the sources of Islamic law. We will explore how these sources interact and complement each other. We will delve into the primary and secondary sources, examining their roles in shaping Islamic jurisprudence. This includes understanding the methodologies used by scholars to derive legal rulings. This exploration will shed light on the dynamic nature of Sharia. It is not static, but evolves in response to new challenges and contexts. It is a system that continues to evolve and adapt to the challenges of the modern world. By understanding its principles and sources, we can appreciate its relevance and application in today's society. The Quran stands as the paramount source of Islamic law and guidance. Muslims believe it to be the literal word of God, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad over a period of 23 years. It is considered the ultimate and unalterable revelation, forming the bedrock of Islamic faith and practice. The Quran contains a wide range of verses related to law and governance. These verses address matters such as prayer, fasting, charity, marriage, inheritance, and criminal justice. However, it's important to note that the Quran does not provide detailed legal codes for every situation. Instead, it establishes fundamental principles and values that guide Muslims in their daily lives. The language of the Quran is often poetic and metaphorical, requiring careful interpretation and contextualization. Scholars have dedicated centuries to studying and interpreting its verses, developing a rich tradition of exegesis known as tafsir. Understanding the historical context, linguistic nuances, and overall message of the Quran is crucial for deriving legal rulings. The Quran serves as the ultimate authority in Islamic law. Its principles and values form the foundation upon which all other sources of law are built. Muslims believe that adhering to the Quran is essential for attaining God's pleasure and living a righteous life. Complementing the Quran is the Sunnah, the second primary source of Islamic law. The Sunnah encompasses the Prophet Muhammad's words, actions, and tacit approvals. It provides practical examples of how the Quranic principles should be implemented in daily life. The Sunnah acts as a crucial bridge between the divine revelation and human understanding. It demonstrates how the abstract principles of the Quran can be translated into concrete actions and behaviors. For instance, while the Quran establishes the obligation of prayer, it is the Sunnah that details the specific movements, timings, and supplications involved. The Prophet's companions meticulously observed and transmitted his teachings and practices. These accounts were carefully compiled and documented in collections known as Hadith. Scholars meticulously study and authenticate these hadiths to ensure their reliability and chain of transmission. The Sunnah plays a vital role in Islamic jurisprudence. It clarifies ambiguities in the Quran, provides detailed guidelines for religious practices, and offers ethical and moral guidance for Muslims. By emulating the Prophet's example, Muslims strive to live a life that is pleasing to God. Section 4. A case in point: prayer in Islam. To illustrate how the Quran and Sunnah work in tandem, let's consider the example of prayer in Islam. Prayer, or salah, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, making it a fundamental aspect of a Muslim's faith and practice. The Quran explicitly commands Muslims to establish prayer and give the zakah, charity, and bow with those who bow in worship and obedience. 2:43. This verse is a clear directive from Allah, emphasizing the importance of prayer in a Muslim's life. This verse clearly establishes the obligation of prayer, but it doesn't specify the details of how to pray. The Quran provides the command, but the specifics are left to the Sunnah. This is where the Sunnah comes in. The Sunnah, which encompasses the teachings and practices of the Prophet Muhammad, serves as a practical guide for Muslims. The Prophet Muhammad meticulously demonstrated how to perform the prayer, ensuring that every aspect was covered in detail, from the initial ablution to the final salutation. Ablution, or wudu, is a purification process that prepares a Muslim for prayer, symbolizing both physical and spiritual cleanliness. He taught the specific movements, each with its own significance and meaning, the order of the postures, and the accompanying supplications. These supplications, or du'as, are recited at various stages of the prayer, connecting the worshipper with Allah. His companions observed and memorized these actions, ensuring that the practice of prayer was preserved accurately, ensuring their accurate transmission to future generations. This oral and practical transmission has kept the tradition of prayer alive and consistent across centuries. Through the Sunnah, Muslims have a clear and comprehensive understanding of how to fulfill the Quranic commandment of prayer. The Sunnah complements the Quran by providing the necessary details for its implementation. This interplay between the Quran and Sunnah is a recurring theme in Islamic law. It highlights the dynamic relationship between divine revelation and prophetic tradition. The Quran lays down the fundamental principles and values, serving as the foundation of Islamic belief and practice, while the Sunnah provides the practical guidance for their implementation. This ensures that the teachings of Islam are not just theoretical, but are lived and experienced in daily life. This symbiotic relationship ensures that Islamic law remains both firmly rooted in divine revelation and relevant to the changing needs of society. It allows for adaptability while maintaining core principles. It allows Muslims to navigate the complexities of life with clarity and confidence, knowing that their actions are aligned with the teachings of Islam. This alignment brings a sense of peace and purpose, knowing that their actions are aligned with the teachings of Islam. This harmony between belief and practice fosters a strong sense of community and individual spiritual fulfillment. Section 5. Ijma, the consensus of scholars. Moving beyond the primary sources, we encounter the secondary sources of Islamic law, which play a crucial role in addressing issues not explicitly covered in the Quran and Sunnah. These secondary sources are essential for the dynamic and evolving nature of Islamic jurisprudence. These secondary sources, developed by Islamic scholars over centuries, provide mechanisms for interpreting and extrapolating legal rulings based on the foundational texts. They ensure that Islamic law remains relevant and applicable to the changing circumstances of the Muslim community. One of the most important secondary sources is Ijma, which refers to the consensus of qualified Islamic scholars on a particular legal issue. This consensus is not easily achieved and requires rigorous debate and discussion among scholars. The concept of Ijma is rooted in the belief that God would not allow his community to unanimously agree on an error in matters of religious importance. This belief underscores the divine guidance that is thought to accompany the consensus of scholars. Ijma carries significant weight in Islamic jurisprudence. It is considered a binding source of law, second only to the Quran and Sunnah. The consensus of scholars provides a collective wisdom that individual reasoning might lack. It is particularly valuable in addressing novel situations that were not present during the time of the Prophet. As new issues arise, the consensus of scholars helps to provide clear and authoritative guidance. For instance, the early Muslim community faced the question of whether the use of paper for recording the Quran was permissible. This was a significant issue as it pertained to the preservation of the holy text. The Quran was originally revealed and preserved on materials like parchment and animal skins. These materials were considered sacred and traditional. Through scholarly debate and analysis, the Muslim community reached a consensus that using paper did not contradict the spirit of the Quran's teachings. This decision was based on the practical need for a more durable and accessible medium. This Ijma ensured the preservation and wider dissemination of the Quran. The use of paper allowed for more copies to be made and distributed, making the holy text more accessible to Muslims around the world. It highlights how Islamic law adapts to new circumstances, while remaining true to its core principles. The process of Ijma demonstrates the flexibility and resilience of Islamic jurisprudence, ensuring that it can meet the needs of the Muslim community in every era. Section 6. Qiyas, analogical reasoning in action. Qiyas, another significant secondary source of Islamic law, refers to analogical reasoning. This method involves drawing parallels between a new case and an existing ruling from the Quran or Sunnah based on a shared underlying cause, illah. Qiyas allows Islamic law to address contemporary issues that have precedence in the foundational texts. It ensures that Islamic jurisprudence remains relevant and responsive to the evolving needs of society. However, applying Qiyas requires rigorous scholarly analysis and a deep understanding of Islamic principles. An example of Qiyas can be seen in the prohibition of alcohol. The Quran explicitly forbids intoxicants like wine, but it doesn't mention other substances that can cause intoxication. Through Qiyas, scholars determined that the illah, underlying cause for the prohibition, was intoxication itself. This reasoning led to the prohibition of other intoxicating substances like beer and spirits, even though they are not explicitly mentioned in the Quran. This example illustrates how Qiyas allows Islamic law to adapt to new situations while remaining grounded in the wisdom of the primary sources.